right, guys. Well, this is my first official podcast here with the Healing Lotus. This is Dr. Myers, and I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Diane Myers. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas. I'm also a PhD in child development, and I have a family practice. I use filial therapy here in McAllen, Texas.
And so how do people make an appointment with you, or how does that work?
I have a website. It's Diane Myers Counseling, and I'll spell it DIANEMYERS, and then counseling, COUNSELING.com.
Thank you so much. And so this is where you guys can reach out to her if you need any kind of advice or guidance to what to do. But so our topic for today is going to be child molestation and sexual abuse. I just wanted to get her insight and just get us informed for the public, so we know what to look out for, things like that, situations that sometimes we tend to overlook. But yeah, do you want to give us a little bit of information on child sexual abuse?
Well, quite a topic, and I'm not sure where to start. So I'll start from the standpoint that in my practice, I see it more often than I would like to. People come in and they say, oh, well, my child said that so-and-so touched them, and how can I know that to be sure? And I think to myself, well, he said it, didn't he? I'm not in the business of proving or disproving anything, but when a child tells me something, I pay attention. And I know from reading the literature over the years that children make outcries and some children don't make outcries. I think probably more don't than do. And I've often been asked, but why don't they tell? Why don't they say? But it's very complex, because one of the things is that children are afraid. They're little, they're powerless, they don't know if they're in trouble, and they're often groomed to think they'll be in big trouble, that the cops will come to the house and arrest you. And they believe that. So that's for really young children. And others are told, Child Protective Services will come and they'll take you away and you'll have to live in foster care. I mean, there's a lot of lies told to kids. So to tell means they've got to risk being found out for what they see as something that was their fault. They're shamed and blamed in the process. So it's really hard. But there are those kids that do. And in my experience, I think there are lots of families that have empowered their children to be able to come forward and say, Mom, this is happening to me, and do it fearlessly. But they're not exactly the norm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So apart from it being that they're afraid, also usually the perpetrators are people that are known, family member, or what have you seen in your practice?
Well, usually they're known. This isn't like the stranger off the street, although that absolutely happens also. But the majority is someone that you know. It can be the neighbor next door, it can be a teacher, a coach, the principal of the school, anybody. It happens more in lower socioeconomic groups than it does in higher. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen across all socioeconomic groups, because it does.
And it's not a culture like a Hispanic culture more than anything.
All cultures.
All cultures. So I guess for myself, I started to notice a pattern when I saw I'm going to say maybe 8 out of 10 of my friends had a similar story. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is too common.
Yes.
Why is this not talked about? Why is this so common? Why does it keep happening? And a lot of them had a story like it was their older brother, it was their uncle, it was always a family member, mm-hmm. more than anything. And I was just like...
The kid next door, their cousin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it makes it even more difficult to tell on that person, because mm-hmm. it's somebody you know. Yeah. So that's, oh my God, it makes it so much harder for a kid to feel like it's their fault.
Well, and sometimes if they tell, then the whole family puts pressure on them to shut up, keep quiet, we'll handle it. It doesn't get handled.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I'd like to point out that the same thing happened in my family. So I kind of was like shunned from the family, which is fine. But I did as an adult. I can't imagine as a child.
Yeah.
Having come out with that and everybody not talking to me, and like I don't know that I could have handled that as a child. As an adult, it was hard enough. So yeah, I'm gonna say that that's something that's very difficult for sure to
And there's often a retraction once the social services get called in and the police and people are asking questions, and the kid will be in the spotlight, and it's heavy for a child. And meanwhile, in the background, families saying, "Shut up! Don't tell! Don't keep this to yourself." And they'll say, "Oh,
or it's not true.
Yeah, it's not true. You're a liar."
Yeah.
And they retract. They say, "No, I wasn't telling the truth."
Yeah, I actually had an aunt of mine actually communicate with me afterwards after they were trying to investigate, and she was like, I can't say anything because your uncle will like kill me, and I was just like so she's basically telling me like I can't support you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because
your uncle's gonna kill me, so I have to say that it's not true. Basically, right? So it's like, wow, it's terrible.
I have to cover him.
Yeah. Yeah, so it feels completely, you feel alone.
Oh, totally alone.
Totally alone. And I can't imagine as a child being put through that, or as a child, like, oh, she said this, so everybody's pointing the finger at the child, right? Like, oh, she said you did this, you did that, you saw and you didn't, and so everybody's gonna hate on the kid. Can you picture that as oh man, I can't.
I had a girl one time, she was 13, 14, and she had been molested by her father. And the mother sat right here and said to me, "When is he going to be able to come home?" Yeah, over and over. And so I wondered, what's it like to be 13 and hear that?
Yes, I've actually
in my opinion, never.
Those stories.
He doesn't get to come home
No.
until this child is raised and gone.
So that happens a lot as well, where the kid makes an outcry, boyfriends of the moms, and they continue to date the person and allow it to happen.
That's very common.
That is that's difficult, because as a child being like, man, my mom knew, she knew what was going on, and then on top of that, she allowed him to keep coming, and on top of that, she allowed him to keep abusing. That's
and then
tough.
on top of that, you have social services that don't step in and protect. That is the hardest thing to work with for me. I can make the call to CPS, but that doesn't mean anything's going to happen.
Which is tough, even both with on top of that, because you can go to CPS and get the children removed, right? And then you have a lot of those parents that do that to the children too, which is that's another conversation. But definitely, I feel like they also need kind of different screening for these parents.
Yes.
Because it's kind of easy to get children. They just apply and then you get these children, right? They do some background check, but most people are not reported.
Yeah.
So then that makes it difficult. But either way, either route, it's difficult, and it happens. And I guess when a child makes an outcry, to pay attention and look into it, and not just fly it off and know why is she saying that?
Yeah.
Because kids don't think like that. Kids are not let me plot against this adult. What? That doesn't make sense.
Although I've actually heard adults say, "Oh, don't you see that he's working you against me?" Well, yeah, a 2-year-old can figure out how to get a cookie from one or the other. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about 3, 4, 5-year-olds. They're not sitting around thinking, how do I get this guy in trouble?
Yeah, exactly.
And how can I make it really bad? Doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think definitely.
Or mom planted the idea. That's the other one. When I get these littlest kids, then I'll have law enforcement or the other attorney who will say, "Oh, mom's just planting all that." It's not what the research says. There was a major Canadian study. The only name I can remember is Ballas, Balas, but there were Trotney. Those are 2 names that were on the study. And they looked at parental alienation syndrome, and they specifically looked at the ones that had that alleged. It was overwhelmingly fathers that said that, and not mothers, and children never. So, this was on thousands of cases in Canada. So it doesn't bear out in the research literature that mom is planting these. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It doesn't, because I know it does. But it is not every single case that comes across the board. That's ridiculous.
And there's way too many for it to all be
exactly
that.
Yeah.
And speaking of the amount of times this happens, I was reading on the psychology book that said only 10% of the population goes through this. And I was like, there's no way.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it so much, and as time goes by, before it was just my girlfriends, and now that I've been talking about it more on social media, I have men reach out to me and tell me that this happened to them as a child, as a boy, and they never told anybody.
Yes.
Because
Here.
and you don't hear about boys even more. You don't hear about girls because of all these other things, but even a boy, it happens to the boys as well. And people think that because it's a boys, but they also need to be careful with their boys.
The statistics on this are so confusing and varied. It depends on who you're looking at. For a while, I was reading statistics that said 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 8 boys, or 1 in 6 boys. I think it's more like 1 in 6. And I know that it's 1 in 4 girls. It's just too much. And then I'm reading things like 9% 9% of 1,000 kids. I don't think so. I don't know. The one thing about those statistics is they're in such flux and such confusion right now, but I don't think it's so important to know exactly how many. It's do they say it happened? Okay, come talk to me about that.
So I mean, it also depends on how they tested this 10%, right? Because it could be where only the ones that were prosecuted and were considered guilty.
Yeah.
Or is it people that are also accused and it just made an outcry?
Yeah.
Or also it's people that don't report, which is the majority. Majority of people do not report. Yeah. They don't.
But there is something real interesting going on. I can't remember the year. I think it's 1990. There has been a decline in the number of cases. Okay. It went from 150,000 down to 90,000. Now, what's that about? That's interesting. One of the things that was conjectured was that improved economy, and that had something to do with the decline. And I don't remember what the other things were, but I think there's more to be read on that.
I'm thinking on that, could it also be that this new generation is very outspoken, very...
Yes.
Very...
I thought that too.
Very communication.
A difference in... Yeah,
so
a difference
I'm thinking that could be a thing as well.
But it's also... I thought to myself, I wonder how this connects with the sexualization of children in our culture, which is so predominant. And I was thinking about child porn and predators that are waiting online for your child to just log on. Our kids deal with that. I didn't. Other generations didn't, but these kids today do. And I think that is a form of child sexual abuse, and it's not really talked about as such, but it is. Sending private photos of yourself to somebody, that's sexual abuse when you convey that stuff across the internet.
Yeah. Actually, there's I was watching a show with Maggie that they find these predators that are on there, and the things they say and the things so these people try to I'm this age, and they keep saying,
and they're really good at it
still. And so all the way that they look at it and the things that they say and how they manipulate the child or trying to manipulate the child, it's crazy, and it is something that people nowadays have to think about, because their kids are on the phone a lot. I can honestly say for my kids as well, my kids have their phones, and I don't go through their phones or anything like that, but it is very dangerous, and it's literally anything's available.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
It's crazy. It's a different time, a different world. But again, communication. What would you say would be the best way to avoid something like this?
Well, you have to just talk to your kids a lot. It's not enough to say, don't do this. You have to talk about things that happen, like something you see in the news. You know, I saw this story and this happened to this young person. She thought she was talking to a boy in San Antonio. Turns out it was her best friend living a few blocks over who was pretending to be that boy. That was an actual thing that happened here.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of bring up the subject and the topic, because I think when we talk to our kids, we tend to give them like a very vague explanation, and when we give like scenarios, they get to think outside the box.
But to engage them in a real conversation of, you know, what do you think is true here? How do we know whether that person is who they say they are? Do we know? And of course we don't. We have no idea.
So I like that. I like that you bring it up where you make them think, because that's a really good way to start, because kids don't develop the frontal lobe, which is where you make up decision making. So it's really important for us to be extra detailed with kids and to remember that.
And it makes parenting a lot more challenging, because we have to think as adults of all the ways in which the evil that's out there wants our kid. And at the same time, raise a kid that's independent and is not afraid to try new things and risk. But they need to be really well-informed. And well-informed means we have to talk at the dinner table or in the car on the way home from school about things that happen.
Have those conversations, yes.
Often.
Yes, because we don't want to make them fearful of the world,
right?
But get them aware and let them just know that be on the toes, but still be free. And so, talk to them daily, like just make sure it's a conversations that you guys have. That's a very good. Yeah.
Well, connecting with them every day. We overschedule our kids. They're in too much. They're in this thing, that thing, and everybody is carpooling every day after school. Some of that could go away, and there could just be some downtime between you and your kids, and kids dealing with boredom and finding healthy ways to deal with boredom rather than getting online and playing these games and talking to people in chat rooms that they don't know anything about. All of that can be minimized because you are connected. There used to be a dinner hour. That to me has been one of the hardest things to understand, is how people have let the dinner hour go because so-and-so's in practice. So in a week's time, where was it that you spent time just being family, being with your parent, being with your mom, your dad? Where is it?
It's funny you bring this up, because I've been feeling like that lately. So I started to make where we're doing things as a family, like we go to the park or something where we are hanging out. So we've been doing a lot of board games, or we go to the park and do something together. And
there's safety in that.
My kids have changed and grown up that I didn't know who they were anymore. So that's what I was like. I felt guilty. I was like, I'm focused on the business and I'm focused on this and I'm putting them aside. I'll be like, later. They're growing up. Later's gonna be too late. Like, it's now. And so it's tough to get out of that busy, crazy schedule to try and be that, but you have to, it's crucial, it's important.
Because you can't get it back. You can't get that time back.
Yeah.
And that connection with your kid and that conversation that is ongoing, that is your best defense against the outside world.
Because it's going to determine on them how they react to the situation, and that's going to be key. Let's see. So in your profession, what have you found to be most challenging with child sexual abuse cases?
That's easy. Off the top of my head, I can tell you that the system's in place to help children, and that is the most challenging. Like, I have story after story where I'm expecting CPS or other systems, not just CPS, I can't just point the finger at them, to do the right thing and the protective thing for a kid. The justice system, they don't. They're not well educated, and they don't know all the research that's out there, but they could do so much better. The American Professional Society on Child Abuse, they're acronym is APSAC. They offer a $50 online course if you're a member, or it's $150 if you're not a member. And it's in modules and you take it online. I think everybody, even citizens, everybody should take that. But certainly CPS should take it, the judges should take it, the attorneys, social workers, anybody that works with children should take that and be informed. But they're not.
So why would you say it's definitely like different adding up to not helping? So it's obviously not just one department, but it's like all of it together that doesn't come through to help these cases.
They don't talk, it's all supposed to be confidential, and I understand that. But being able to staff a case is so important, and I think you and I were talking about how Dr. Moss and I would get together and plan and talk, and you and I would, and there was that communication, and all of it geared towards ensuring that the kids were doing well and that you had the information that you needed. If you can just speak to the social worker, the judge, whoever is involved, but no, you can't. And there are other reasons that it doesn't work. The Texas legislature, they aren't well informed either. So they have not passed laws that really help set up a system that does take care of kids in a better way. And I don't know, I think any judge that does any kind of family law or divorce or custody, they should be required to have continuing education units every 2 years in child development, in issues for children, like this course through APSAC. It is a real winner and could certainly help towards making the systems that are involved much better informed. I'll give an example. I had a little boy and his brother, they were like 9 and 5 at the time, and the 9-year-old made the outcry, first to his counselor and then to his principal. And whoever was doing the investigation in CPS was just not very sharp. He wanted to know when it happened, what time frame are we talking about? And he closed it. I mean, I came to it kind of late, and he'd already done his investigation. But he closed it, saying that because the child could not give a time framework, 9-year-old. So here's developmentally what he didn't know. Children can tell you what time it is if they look at a clock. They can say it says 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. But they don't understand time in the abstract. So sometimes you'll hear little ones say, "You mean yesterday, today, tomorrow?" Or they just are hilarious the way they put it together. But they can't figure out 3 weeks ago or before Christmas. How many weeks was it? Well, it was before Christmas. They can't do that. So they don't understand abstract time. And this 9-year-old, of course, was that kid. He doesn't know, did it happen after school started? He didn't know. They closed the case because he couldn't give a time frame. And I wish I could say that was abnormal or an outlier, but it's not. Every day.
And so it just goes out.
It was done.
Wow, yeah, that's very frustrating. And you see like a lot of cases, more than most, that don't get justice.
I'm always surprised by how they end. To me, it's rare that it goes a really good way, which a good way to me would be no contact with the offender whatsoever, or that offender needs to go to jail, or the child needs to be in a safe environment, or it's always some kind of compromise, but it's never in the child's favor.
Which is very disappointing. And then having to make connection with these children and kind of feel like not an attachment, but like a mothering, like nurturing to them, and to not be able to help feels very like your hands are tied, and they're telling you because they're hurt, they're going through this, or they want help, and for you to not be able to help is so hard. It's so difficult.
And it's also hard when it's a teenager who does the offending as the perpetrator. I was working with a 5-year-old, and at 4, he had been molested by this teenager. It completely changed his personality. And the mother was telling me that this was the most happy-go-lucky kid you had ever seen, with a cute sense of humor and a great joy of life. And he went from that to completely shut down. Angry, could throw things, just miserable. And that boy, the 16-year-old, I think he got some kind of probation. Didn't have to make any restitution, nothing, probation.
And do they get something on their record or anything that indicates?
No, I think that they did it so he wouldn't have anything on his record. Yeah, so
and there we go again.
There we go again.
There we go again.
Yeah.
Failing.
I have dozens of those.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So I think for me something that it's funny that the person that gave me this advice is the person who did this, but he got me to do the right thing by saying every kid that comes after you didn't say something, so you have some fault in every kid that comes after.
Yeah.
Because you weren't brave enough to say something and protect them.
That's very frustrating.
And that hit, and that made me feel I am at fault if I don't say something. I am at fault if I continue to not say something. And eventually I did something about it, and it was hard because it was my own father, like, so it was difficult, but I did, and that's tough. Like, to see it that way, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's true, because the person before me, if they had said something, maybe I would have been saved, and it didn't happen that way. So yeah, so I guess it gave me the courage to go and do something about it and do the right thing. And I guess in the end, it's like, whether it gets proven right or not, I did my part. I did my report. I did what I had to do, and I think even that is enough. It's something. Like, to get it on record, or to somehow, some report somewhere to be there to warn somebody else. But yeah, I think it's important to come out. Yeah. Even if you're an adult, right?
And sometimes when people tell, they don't get the response that they were expecting or hoping for, and people let them down and hurt them. And that's sad. It's just another part of the process that you have to learn to deal with. But it's a resiliency kind of issue. And just because that one person didn't respond the way you had hoped doesn't mean that others won't. And that you can't, I'm going to back up and say this. It doesn't matter who validates you. It doesn't matter. It's your truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a cousin come to my job, ask me why it had happened, why am I not speaking to the family. And then after I tell him, that can't be true, because I hung out with him all the time. Like, I hung out with him all the time, like, he never showed signs. And I was like, okay, so you came here to ask me just to tell me I'm lying? I'm like, and this is where I kick myself, because I'm like, I should have said this, and I should have said that. But
yeah, darn it.
Later I said, but to me it's always like, the best test, you want to go test it, go leave your children over there. And I bet you they're not going to do it. They shouldn't. And I mean, there's a rumor that goes around in the family, and everybody knows. So how could you sit there and tell me that I'm lying? Like, how dare you, right? And another thing is, I saw the version of him behind closed doors. You saw the illusion he gives everybody else. That charismatic person that everybody adores and loves. Like, you saw that version. I saw the version behind closed doors.
Right.
So it's terrible when someone tells you, like, they don't believe you. It's sad. But I think I'm at a point where I'm like, yeah, that doesn't hurt me. But yeah, validation, I think when you confront someone, you expect that person to be a better person and say, you know what, yes, I did this, I'm sorry.
And it would be nice.
It would be nice, but they're not a better person. Yeah. They did this and they're not the better person. So that's kind of difficult to accept that they're not going to apologize. So it's a tough one, for sure.
And what does it mean that you get an apology? Does it mean that you are suddenly freer, better? Because if you don't get an apology, which is common, is that going to interfere with you going forward with your best life? Why would it? I tell people this all the time. It's something that happened to you. It's not who you are. It was an event in time, in the past, and it doesn't mean that you can't now be as happy as you want to be, as successful as you want to be, as kind and gentle as you want to be. Doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't define who you are.
And that's beautiful to hear, because I think that can drag somebody down a lot, expecting like that validation or that apology, and it's tough for someone to hear, but I like that you bring up, you gotta keep going. You gotta keep going, you can't let it hold you back. You can't continue to let them win or or be still that person that's over you, because that's dragging you down.
And you can celebrate. I'm not that person. I'm this person.
Exactly. Yeah. So okay, I guess where does someone start to get help for a situation like this? So what is the first steps? Report to your local policeman, or what is the steps for that?
Local police, you can call the hotline in Austin. You can work with a therapist. You can read. I really encourage people to read. Go to, let me get the name of it, the Crimes Against Children Research Center at the University of New Hampshire. That is a wonderful website with all kinds of resources and information. It'll surprise you when you read some of the things that they do and that they're looking at. The director is David Finkelhor, Finklehor. He is a prolific author, and so things that he writes are really good to read. I'm very interested in predators, and I've done a lot of reading and research on them because when I'm working here, I'm hearing things and I'm like, that sounds like a predator. Because there are patterns of behavior. And one of the books that I recommend and that I really, really like, I have such admiration for this woman. Her name's Dr. Anna Salter, and it's called Predators, Pedophiles, Rapists, and Other Sex Offenders. Who they are, how they operate, and how we can protect ourselves and our children. This is like the Bible to me when it comes to having current, truthful, so useful information for a parent. And I've read it more than once and learned something new every time. She went around the country to different prisons and she interviewed predators. And her interviews and how she talks about what she learned and what happened are just fascinating.
Yeah. You know, I actually emailed her at one point in my life, and she responded.
Yes, very nice woman.
She responded, and that is a great book. It really does give you so much insight. It's crazy. Like, you don't think that certain patterns and certain things to look out for, like you don't know, and it's like, it's good.
You suddenly look at things so differently because she helps you learn how to see, how to pay attention. I heard her speak over a 2 or 3 day conference in Dallas, and from that I approached a couple of people here in McAllen and said, we need her to come here. Well, it was taken to our DA at the time, who was Robert Rodriguez, and he was instrumental in getting her here. Yeah. So she's actually come to McAllen and trained. There were about 50 to 60 people there. I was hoping for 200, but anyway, 50, 60 is a good number. And people enjoyed it, really liked it. She is just like this walking, breathing encyclopedia and just so full of information.
Yeah, I mean, being able to go to the prison and ask these type of questions and have us, like, not react.
Not react.
I had a few moments when I read this that I wanted to vomit. Like, I really wanted to throw up.
Goosebumps.
I just really felt so sick that I was like, how could I don't think I could hear that message and not have a reaction, you know? Yeah. So it's so, this book making this book, oh my God, it must have taken a lot out of her.
Yeah.
Because, wow, it has so much good information.
And she's updating it. It may have been finished already, but I know that she was working on an updated edition.
Wow.
So
she's found more.
So there's this, and then I was talking about ABSAC. ABSAC is a really good website. They even have training for DAs on how to prosecute cases and get your win.
Wow.
And the other websites that I really like, the DA's Association, they have trainings. Who else? Bruce Perry, and he was in Houston. He has like a institute there out of Baylor. Yeah, Bruce Perry is a wonderful resource. You know, the boy who was raised in a box. Anyway, I've read that. I've read all his stuff, and yeah, you can spend a couple of years reading everything he's written on child abuse.
I need to look into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Miss Salter with the Predators, definitely a book to get, guys. Is there anything else? Any last words of anything towards this topic?
Well, it's a topic that's really important to us as human beings, and yet it's something that no one wants to talk about. But if you can talk about it, you can shed light on things. You know, one of the things I miss about Oprah, yes, I liked Oprah, was that she shed light on it a lot because it happened to her.
Yeah.
And she really, throughout her career, did what she could to help other kids.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that people don't like to talk about. And it's very hush-hush, and it's very like, don't talk about it. And the more we stay quiet about it, the more it keeps happening. And the more that everyone pretends like it's not happening, but it is.
Yes.
And that's how we protect our kids, by talking about it and really have these tough conversations.
Secrecy is the main issue is if you're told to keep a secret, keep your mouth shut, don't talk about this, keep this quiet, keep it private. What does a child do? Where do they go? You know, it's only when they're able to tell, when we're able to say what our truth is, that we're released.
Yes.
And you know, you may not be able to confront or want to even confront your abuser. Maybe they died, maybe they've moved, maybe it's not possible. You have to really think about what you want out of it and what your next steps would be. You may not be able to, you might have dreamed all this time of being able to say everything you ever wanted to say. And that may not be possible. But you can write letters and you can not mail them. You can do the work that you have done, the yoga, the breath work, the therapy. There's so many ways to begin that healing journey and to discover new parts of yourself that you didn't even know were there. And that part's really exciting. Fun even.
It's very empowering and a lot of freedom. I like to do a releasing where I write out and then you burn it. And it just like goes away. I forgive his hurt. I forgive him, and I felt like I finally had some peace, but I still need work on that.
Yeah.
I still have a little bit of anger.
Yeah, that may be something that you work with forever. Yeah. It may be something that, as it comes up, you do a little more, and a little more. Yeah. Is he still in jail?
He got out. I think obviously they deport him, and then he was over there for some time, and I don't know. I don't keep up with that family either. I recently started to kind of dip my toes trying to reach out to them because I do miss my family, right? But I always would say, that's his family, not mine. And so my uncle passed away, and I didn't want to cause any stir-up, so I literally just showed up just to say goodbye and then walked out immediately so I wouldn't cause a stir-up and still cause a stir-up. So it was like, there's no point in trying to like mingle with them or trying to, there's no point. This is my peace. Like, I just have to, that family is not my family, and that's it. And the same with my family is like, it's always an issue. It's just better to leave it alone and love them from all of them from afar,
Mhm.
and just know that there's too many opinions, too many of everything that
Chaos here, chaos here. How you escape that is beyond a miracle. It's beyond, but you did. And you know, a research article, one of the research articles that sticks in my mind. What is the difference? Why do some people make it out and others don't? Intelligence. Intelligence, the ability to think. You know, when you stay in that dark, hurting, angry place, there's no light, and there's nothing that can come in and give you wisdom, understanding, insight into it. But when you allow it, the freedom comes to you. They can do their own work. You don't have to worry about it. It's not for you. You figured it out for you, and out you go.
which is hard because you get this whole family dynamic thing that you're like, oh, well, it's family. Like, you have to put up with it. It's family. Like, family, they've done so many horrific things, close to murdering each other, and still come back to each other.
They certainly murdered souls, the souls of children. They murdered. So yeah, the only thing they didn't do maybe was physically take somebody out.
And they came pretty close, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's many stories that I'm just like, wow, like, and still they stick together, and it's like, I'm not doing that. I certainly think that for me, what helped me was that I was in sports, and because my mom was not going to wake up in the morning to take me to school, I had to stay at my friends' houses, and that's where I saw, like,
oh, this is how
live
people
differently. And then I was like, there's something wrong with my family.
Yeah.
And at that point, when you're born in that life, to you, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's your normal. That's what you live. That's to you, it's not a big deal. Like, that's your life. And you don't know that people live different.
Yeah.
And so for me, being in sports and staying with my friends was a gift.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I somehow eventually had to get out of that. And yeah, it was, which I obviously wasn't planning it in my head, but you get that message, you see, you eventually know that this is not the right way. And so, yeah, it was, and I guess also kind of like active meditation. So meditation helps to go within, right? So I was a big runner, cross-country runner, so it was like long distance running. You're in your head, and so all of that got me to just be in within me and thinking and being in my head, and so all that helps to process and to kind of decide on things and kind of just think differently.
Physical exertion that lets you expend some of that horrible energy.
I mean, I had a lot of friends that, because I'm very open about this, about myself, not about the children stuff, but like about myself. I'm very vocal about it because I want people to know that there's a way out, and that even though you went through all this, there's a way out, and there's always a light, and there's always a way to look at it differently. And I always felt like my love, like I was just such a loving person and such a happy person, like, and I was like, why can't I hold grudges? Why can't I be mad at someone? And I would hate that I was just so kind and loving. But that was my power. That was my light. That was my way out of my mental prison.
Yeah.
Like, when you are not like that, you tend to hold grudge. You're an angry person. You're just, everything goes wrong, and you just have this hatred, and it makes your life so much harder than to just be able to, well, that happened, but let's do this. Or like, and just seeing the light of everything has been my power, my magic. And I never knew that, wow, this is magical, and I love it, and it's so beautiful. And just, I guess with that, like talking about the situations, I like to get people to think of things differently, because it's all about the perspective and how you look at it and how you evaluate it, and it's just so two different ways to look at it, and one's going to keep you there and one's going to help you out. Let's see. So what advice would you give someone listening who's going through this right now? I guess what do you suggest?
Tell. tell.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about like emotional, like for themselves? Is a lot of times you tend to be like, well, I'm okay, like it doesn't bother me, like I don't even care about it. Like, what do you say to that?
Well, we kind of know that's not so.
It's not so.
And you can look at your life and you can see where it's not working in your relationships, in your life satisfaction, how you sleep, the things you dream about. You know, we're able to do a lot on our own. We can, because when you're smart, you can think and you can work your way out of problems. But the problem is, so many of us don't have those skills, and it is a skill. You can learn how to think, not what to think in therapy, but how to think, and where your thinking is hurting you, and how it's interfering with your best life. So telling and seeking help can turn your life around, can change things. And you make the point with me that it was the therapy plus the yoga that was so healing for you. And I can totally see that. There's body work that needs to be done.
Not symptoms, but things to look out for when you need to heal this childhood wound is, what would you think are some symptoms?
Well, depression, of course, anxiety, PTSD, those are all issues that come in my door. And with children, the grades drop, they have depression, they have anxiety, they don't want to be around certain people anymore. You know, they cry and beg, I don't want to go over there. Pay attention. Pay attention to that. Yeah, drugs and alcohol, those are big ones.
So I would say definitely for sure drugs and alcohol, substance abuse, and you don't think you're doing it for that reason,
Right.
but it's called, I can't think of the word right now. Like you use it, coping mechanism. It's your coping mechanism that you don't know you're doing it for that reason. So I guess if we go back, let's look at my situation, right? I thought the substance abuse was, I did experiment a lot with drugs in high school and trying to and I didn't know, I thought I was just having fun. I didn't know that it was something I was trying to mask and keep down and whatever. And then also then as an adult, where it was like, I still would have those drinking moments, and then I would have moments where I'd regret stuff and I'd regret my behavior and all these little, like, what do you call them? I don't know, I'm acting out, but more of acting out. And I was just always like, why do I do that? Or why do I do this? And I didn't put the two together, that it was like I had something down deep that I needed to heal and I needed to deal with, because the masking it with substance abuse was not the route. And obviously I didn't know I was masking it, or I didn't know I needed healing towards it, but.
And so many people use drugs to escape the thinking, escape what they experienced.
Escape the life.
Yeah, and yet all of that puts you in an altered state of being. It attacks your brain. And with drinking especially, you're depressed, so you drink. It's a depressant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And putting the two together is important.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm not gonna say there's anything wrong with people who do it, but like if you're constantly there, like constantly drinking, like there's something to look at. There's something to see. Why do I need to do this?
What are you not wanting to look at?
Yeah, what are you not wanting to deal with and not wanting to look at and reflect and figure out what's next? Because there's something there. So yeah, definitely the big symptom to look for when healing is and to deal with anything fast.
One of your questions was, hold on, thoughts on our first meeting.
I'm really curious about that because I
thought, what has Dr. Hamas done to me? It was complete pandemonium. That's what I remember. I thought, oh, what do I do? But we did it, and we did it for a year. I think just being able to ride that Bronco, being able to ride that for a year was so powerful and instrumental in my skills, because all I could think about was my primary goal was to bring some stabilization And I think it took about a year. But I could look at the kids at 12 months and they were very different from the first month. And in that year, watching you work and us working together and me talking to Dr. DeMoss, I mean, it was like the communication, I think, was key for us. That's where it was always really helpful but good.
Yeah, it was tough. I think
There were so many issues.
There was a lot going on. A lot. Oh my gosh. Like, I remember just showing up like, I need help.
Help me, Lord.
Like, help me. And the funny part is that I went because I knew, one, I didn't know how to be a parent. Like, I'd never seen good parenting before. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I needed help there. And I wanted to raise them different. And I didn't know how to do all of that. And I need somebody to guide me. And I was just like, I'm here. Just give me the book.
It should be recorded.
Yeah.
You are? It's already going? Okay.
Yeah, I've learned that when conversation starts, it's just, it flows and a lot of stuff, good information comes out in the before. So I'm like, I'm just going to record, and if I need to put anything out, I will. But yes, it's been a journey. And yeah, showing up was like, I need help.
It took about a year for me to, for me to structure it a little differently. I began to think to myself, okay, 4 in the room plus 2 adults is a little much. And these kids need a little more intensive. And that's when we divided, and Maggie went with Dr. DeMoss, and I kept Brenda and Julio. And of course, Jordan. Poor Jordan. Wonder what he thought growing up.
Well, they're his sisters and brothers. Like, they don't see each other as anything other than that.
Yeah. And then, it seemed to work. It seemed to go much better because Maggie needed that one-on-one. And Brenda and I had kind of built up a bond. And my working with Brenda and you working with Julio in a session was really effective, I think. So the other thing that I was going to say to you about when we first met, it was stunning and astonishing to watch you develop as quickly as you did. You had the best intuition of anybody I've ever worked with. I mean, there's never been anybody like you since. I have good parents, and I have people that know what to do here. But you had something different. And when Julio would lie down on the carpet and say, Mom, lay with me, and pull the blankets up, that you just knew, and you put your arm over him, and I could just see the love and the care and the healing begin to happen for him. That guy at 4 had so little, practically nothing. And so for him to ask for it and you to give it so quickly, it was a wonder to watch. And it never lasted very long. It might have been just a few seconds, but he did it every time because he needed that. He needed that comfort and that safety. And, Jordan, on the other hand, he was already there. He had all that. He was the most confident little guy because he hadn't had all that trauma and all that awfulness. So, yeah, that was really fun to watch, and I learned a lot that first year.
I wonder if it was more that I was still a kid myself.
Maybe.
Or was it that, I don't know, because I think when I would do that, I was uncomfortable with it because I've never been shown affection if it wasn't sexual. Mm-hmm. So it was really hard for me to give affection to my kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it wasn't that I was thinking, is it sexual? It wasn't that, it was just, it was awkward. It felt off. It didn't feel natural.
Awkward for you.
Yes, so for me to get in there and try to start being a mom and being nurturing, which I am nurturing, I don't know, I can't explain it. So that was
no, you are. I see it.
Yeah, so it was connecting the two and not making it something that is, or disconnecting something and connecting the other. Yeah. If that makes sense. And so that was also learning for me, and it was slowly dropping the guard because I was very tense at the beginning. It was eventually it was more natural, and it was okay, it just flowed easier, and I already knew that This is what we're doing.
You know, Dr. Damas and I would talk, and when we saw you make the decision to go back to school, it was like cartwheels. Like, oh my God, this little family is improving and developing, and there's just so much good happening here. And we have a ways to go, quite a ways to go, but boy, considering where we had started. And I just felt like that you were such a natural, and, you know, having someone else in the play therapy field, in filial play therapy especially, would be such a good thing. So whatever you decided to do with your education was going to be good, whether it was go that route or just use it for whatever you decided.
Yeah.
It was going to be good.
It was good. I'm very happy I took that journey and didn't think too much about it, because like, I guess that's how I do everything. I just jump and like start. I don't think about like how far, or I was like, I'm just gonna do it. And
you know, for women, it's the one thing that we do that is ours alone. Doesn't belong to anybody else. We did it. It's ours. That name on that piece of paper.
Yes. It feels so good.
Oh yeah.
It does. Yeah.
And it's such a good role model for the kids. And when you have a life that had so much trauma and chaos as yours did, to be able to step out with that achievement and that success, it's just everything.
It's everything. I think that's what pushed me the most. Like, it was that. At some point, it was like, it's not even about me anymore. It's about my children. I want them to be proud. I want them to know that I did it with all of them, and anything is possible. And so at those, you told me at the end it's gonna get tough, so try not to take too many of the easy ones at first.
Right.
And you told me how to plan it, but I took all the easy ones first. So at the end,
and it was hard at the end.
Yeah, so at the end of it, we had that whole thing happen, and then on top of that, it was the harder classes, and I was just out of gas, you know. I needed that extra energy, and it was like, oh man, yeah. So I finished eventually. Took me a little bit. A lot of obstacles I came through at the end.
And what was it like having those kids in the audience watch you walk across that stage?
So they haven't watched me. That's the thing that I've been trying to set it up to see if I can go back just to walk. Because that's what I want my kids to see the most. Because I told you that my diploma came in the mail, and I was like, oh, I'm finished. Yeah, I was like, I still thought I had like another class, or I didn't think I was done. And I just was focused at work that I wasn't paying attention to it. And the diploma arrives in the mail, and I'm like, oh my God, I graduated?
And I bet you can. I bet you can walk.
Yeah, so I have to set that up, because you have to set it up, I think 2 semesters in advance.
Yeah.
So I haven't made the arrangement.
Yeah, do it, because I want them to see you.
I want to do that, like, so bad. Like, it's the moment that I did this for my kids to see me walk that stage. So yeah, it's very accomplishing, because it's hard to, you always keep going and you don't take a moment to just sit and be like, I've done all this already, like I did this. And I've always just kept to the next, that I haven't appreciated where I'm at. It's been so rewarding to just see how like it's evolved, and I'm sure to you as well, like seeing us from this point to this point, and just seeing like all the changes.
13 years, a long time.
Yes, it's been a long journey, and I'm happy to, how do I say, not be your test dummy, but to show you like the progress, and just to have a happy ending at the end of the story, you know, because a lot of times when you have this type of upbringing, it debilitates you, and it kind of like gets you going on another path that seems it come out right or good and happy is happy, is rewarding. I
remember thinking in the beginning, I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep the door open so that you would come back, and that you would feel safe and able to come again, and not judged or having anything heavy. You just needed so much support.
So I guess that concludes my questions, and I'm very happy that I came to see you, and it's been a long
I
time.
know, it's so good to see you.
I changed.
I don't know. You, in some ways, yes, of course you have, but you are still that same girl with the twinkle in her eye and the loving heart and the desire to have a good family. You are still that person.
Yes, always. That's always going to be me.
Yes.
Is there anything else? Any last words of anything towards this topic?
Well, it's a topic that's really important to us as human beings, and yet it's something that no one wants to talk about. But if you can talk about it, you can shed light on things.